Maids, au pairs, gardeners, babysitters, and other domestic workers to the wealthy. What's the weirdest thing you've seen rich people do behind closed doors? Dog walker here. One of my clients only lets her dog drink smart water. I know a lady who's discreetly rich. One of those that unless you knew the more expensive but quiet brands, you wouldn't be able to place her. She would wear designer jewelry sets to the gym. Anyway, her quirk was she liked Costa coffee, so she'd get one day, drink half of it, let it cool and then put the rest of it in the fridge, and reheat and drink the other half the next day. When she told us that she does this, and we asked her why, she laughed and said, "I'm just frugal." I nannied for a New York City power couple in 2014. Both were corporate lawyers for national banks. The husband owned more socks than I had ever seen at one time in my life. Drawers upon drawers of them. All navy blue, black, and grey. Gosh, where to start? The wife was driving through the home improvement part of the city and saw a sale on bathtubs. So she popped in and bought 3. As she was leaving, she saw another tub she liked and simply had to get that one too. She wasn't renovating a house at the time. They refused to throw away food. Used by and best before dates are completely ignored. To the point where I found a tin of seafood marinara which was 15 years out of date. They have a holiday home in the South Pacific and have a housekeeper clean it 3 times a week, yet they only visit 3-4 times a year. When they are not visiting, no one lives there. When the family go out for dinner, the father will happily pay for the expensive meals but not the drinks. The kids, who are all teens or older, have to pay him back for the drinks and he will send reminder messages about the amount. Yet when any of the kids offer to pay for the meal, he won't accept. The wife is a hoarder and will often take way more samples than any normal person. She always makes sure to take all the shampoo, soap, etc. from hotel rooms, and if she passes the housekeeping trolley, will grab as many as she can from there too. Yet she never uses them. They have a whole bathroom cupboard dedicated to samples. I used to be a live-in nanny for the CEO of a major German investment bank in Berlin. They were a lovely couple with a sweet baby girl. They made me feel like part of the family from day one. They paid me well, had a separate car for me and weren't concerned by what I did in my spare time. They were very generous, lovely people. My only gripe is that they had strange eating habits. Some days they would have 3 enormous meals, and other days they would forget to eat all day. I was often too shy to say that I was hungry. Once when I was a nanny, I was house sitting while the family was out of the country. The refrigerator in my apartment broke, so I packed up some perishables and brought them to the family's house to store them until the landlord could fix it. When I brought my groceries back to my place, I realized I had accidentally grabbed something that wasn't mine from the cheese drawer. It was a gallon Ziploc bag. Inside that was a smaller Ziploc bag. Inside that was a bundle of wax paper. Inside that was a bundle of plastic wrap. Inside that was another bundle of plastic wrap. Inside that was a bundle of tin foil. 7 layers deep. I found an old lump of fruitcake. I dated a very wealthy man. Nothing was out of reach for him, and he wasn't used to being told no for any reason. I broke up with him the day he pulled a gun out on his driver because the guy refuses to part with his beanie on a cold day. My ex wanted the beanie and could not understand why he could not just take it. Ducking weird dude. Totally forget how they got their start in life. I used to work for a guy who ran his businesses into the ground and declared bankruptcy. More than once, I believe. He then married rich and his wife paid for him to go to school for a decent certification. He now owns a business that's slowly failing because of how he runs it. But he and his wife still have plenty of family money, and they're well respected in the community. He complains non-stop about lazy millennials who are so entitled and think they deserve free stuff from the government. It bugged me so much to see how he was so dependent on grace and luck that just doesn't exist anymore. But he thought he was so much better than anyone who wanted a leg up. My friend works for a tax lawyer for the obscenely wealthy. Their firm is one of those go-to places when you want to take advantage of tax havens. Think Panama, Luxembourg. He tells me one of their clients had an issue and called the people he always turns to for help. His lawyers. The problem? He bought a new jet and only just realized its entertainment system doesn't have a Blu-ray player. This was 5 years ago. Find someone that can fix it. Today, he had lawyers at 3 different firms searching for a solution that afternoon. All billed him for it, of course. I was a babysitter for rich people once. Their silverware was constantly filthy and caked in what resembled peanut butter and regret. Their children were pleasant, but refused to brush their teeth more often than their hygiene-impaired parents until I told them gross stories about gingivitis. The mom had a small Buddhist altar in the living room, but was also extremely vocal about her Christianity. Would repeat the experience. It was mostly getting paid to help with homework and watch Voltron and Pillow Forts. I was a nanny for an affluent family. They had a beautiful home and nice vehicles, and the kids all had lots of toys and new clothes, but while doing laundry one day I had to take a load of mom's cloths out of the dryer and every single pair of her panties had multiple holes in them. Not like gnaw holes lol, but worn out, most tattered panties I've ever seen holes. Got curious and looked in her undergarment drawer, and this was par for the course and not just period panties. She was like a major high up in a huge company and her panties looked worse than I would imagine a homeless person wearing. I once assisted a country manager of a big MLM company. He wanted me to book him a rental car until he gets his own car. He got so stressed out that the rental car can't accommodate him. It was last minute. His place was less than 5 minutes away from his work, if you walk. I was a nanny for a really wealthy family. Their public face was polished and put together. My second day on the job, I noticed that there were really intricate alarms and lock systems on each of the kids' bedroom doors. It turns out the dad was a register Red 6 offender. The alarm systems would turn on and lock the kids' doors at 9:30 p.m. The mom had to use a special code to open them if the kids needed her during the night. They turned out to be a really ducked up family, so I was only a nanny for a year. Didn't work for them, but went to school with their son. The daughter was 19 and had gotten married, so the couple decided to have a test child that was a small monkey. That was already pretty weird, but then I learned that they also had a previous monkey before that. It had been playing in the laundry while the maid was loading clothes in the washer. Poor thing died. Makes me wonder why they didn't call the test child thing off after the first one died. Babysat a few times for a friend of my lawyer uncle. She was insanely wealthy widow who lost her husband to a freak helicopter accident. She would sleep with her then 10-year-old son both naked in the same bed and then would walk around the house the next morning in the buff. I understand them needing time to grieve and even occasionally sharing a bed. However, the whole naked thing threw me off and I only did it a few weekends. The kid was great and loved me but was a little too touchy and cuddly. No way I was going to be around his naked. It was bit away from my house and she would come home late, so I would sleep in their guest house. The most bizarre was this newly rich young family in Vienna. The bedtime routine for the kids, aged 3 and 7, included basically a spa treatment for both. I haven't seen that amount of products in a child's bathroom. They each had their own. In my life, the poor 7-year-old girl had next to no hair on her head, but I was required to slather her in the most expensive adult shampoo, conditioner, hair mask, hair oil, and some other things I didn't recognize. Every night, they only had one tiny box of toys and time spent playing was set up for 30 minutes after they brushed their teeth. Dinner was normally a bland fish fillet and a ton of salad. Not a grain of sugar anywhere in the house. Hot cocoa was made with skim milk and pure high quality cocoa. No sweetness to it whatsoever. It tasted awful. They had time to explain everything to me the first time I was there, and I received an inch-thick file with lists and procedures to follow. What they didn't mention was that the older girl was still wearing diapers at night. It made for a very awkward conversation with the child, and I only hope I was sensitive enough to not cause her any future trauma. Very, very weird. Helped my mother-in-law, who was a maid once, with a very large mansion in NC. Beautiful house. Amazing architecture. They traveled the world all the time. The kitchen had old appliances from the 70s. The wife's bathroom had a broken toilet seat that was duct taped together. The wife did not rewear her underwear. We were not to go in the basement. I peeked down there. There were clothes 3 foot deep in the basement where she took off her clothes and just threw them down there. Thousands of pairs of underwear. Very weird people. During the summer while I was on vacation from college, I helped my mom at her first landscaping greenhouse job. We went to this particular lady's house in the rich part of town. Big antebellum home. She was a realtor and all that jazz. We called her Dragon Lady because she looked like a wrinkly old dragon, and B, she hoarded the most ridiculous jewelry and always wore it, even in her pajamas. We were taking a job to fix up, replace nice shrubs and flowers that she was just tired of, her backyard. She was a terrible excuse of a human. Mean-spirited. Snide comments. The works. But she had an inordinate amount of fresh young men always in and out of her house. Like the entire time we were there. Quite the variety. And if we ran into one, she always introduced them as her cousins, and we were like, yeah, okay, sure, you old crusty bag. She would flounce around in sheer robes with little to cover anything underneath. The guys followed her around the house like they were on a leash. It was like she wanted us to see her because she was always in her sunroom being doted on by her cousins. Putting lotion on her reptilian skin. Bringing her drinks, food, etc. Then when she was done with them, a slick nice Mercedes would pick them up. We only witnessed the car a couple times, but man, she was weird and gross. She's probably a fossil by now, I guess. She was a relic then, and that was only like 7 years ago. I'm an assistant to a rich guy. I help him run his business. Most of the ones I know are very entitled. They don't understand. No. I have no idea how some of these people got rich. I watched my boss have a full-blown temper tantrum because a customer called him 40 minutes before he was leaving on vacation. Full-blown meltdown. This guy barely does anything and goes on vacation at least once a month. Screws over his customers on a regular basis. We ordered a burger one day and they used a sesame seed bun. He does not like sesame seeds, so he threw the burger at the cook and basically lost his it. Always complains about how itty his life is, even though he buys anything and goes anywhere he wants. It's hard to explain until you see it, but money and greed really screws people up. Once he gets back from summering in LA, I'm looking for something new as I just don't care anymore. I grew up in a middle-class family living in of the richest parts of the country. A lot of my friends had incredibly rich parents. What I remember most of all was how weird some of them can be with money. They'd spent big money on some things, then turn around to be incredibly frugal on something else. I knew people that wouldn't think twice about dropping away $300k on a new car or putting in a sauna and swimming pool in their basement, but who wouldn't allow us more than half a bag of chips between the three of us. I was a nanny for a pretty affluent family for a summer, and on the whole they were really nice and great parents. Two things stood out to me. On one occasion, they had family friends visiting with their 3 children. So I worked a full day taking care of the 5 kids while the 4 adults just hung out in the house. Ostensibly working from home, but really just drinking wine and hanging out. I understand occasionally having the nanny come while you're there so you can work well from home. But nannying 5 children whose parents were 10 feet away was a little absurd. The second thing is that they reused Ziploc bags. I honest to God probably spent at least 45 minutes a day washing, drying, and organizing their Ziploc bags. The family that regularly bought complicated Lego sets for their 5-year-old, and then assembled them for him because they were too complicated for a 5-year-old, while he looked on and complained they weren't doing it fast enough, still receive periodic installments of my pity and contempt. Like, dude, he's not learning anything except that mommy and daddy were put on the planet to please him. And he's not actually learning anything from the toys. They also bought the kid new toys once a week or so. I can't with some parents. I regularly babysat a quietly wealthy widow's 2 kids. Seriously sweet little kids. Hanging out with them was always fun. They even liked sharing their newest toys with you. I don't think anyone in our rather small town realized how loaded she was. When I babysat, it was because she was helicoptering off to the capital 30 km away for a party date / 5-star function in a new designer gown, shoes, purse, the works. She paid really well and always offered me trinkets like gold bracelets that I still couldn't afford 20 years later. I think in part, it was because I never mentioned what she got up to anyone, even my mother who was friends with her. I can't think of anything particularly scandalous, but there seemed to be a really disproportionate number of uncomfortably close relationships between meek, grown sons who still lived at home and their domineering mothers. My dad is an electrician and has worked in some very rich houses. He did a job in one where the couple only drank very posh fresh coffee. Fair enough. Who wouldn't? But they had a cleaner who was permitted 1 cup of coffee each day, but not their coffee. She had her own separate coffee, but it wasn't even a decent, if cheaper, brand. It was the cheapest possible sort to buy, as the Smart Press Instant or something. If a person comes to my flat, whether they are a friend or the plumber, they are a guest and they will drink whatever tea or coffee I drink because I see them as equals. My dad has told me that some of the stingiest people he knows are also the wealthiest. I have 2 jobs like this, and 2 stories. Job A, I'm a nanny. Family isn't overly rich or anything, really down to earth, but the dad keeps complaining on the down low to me whenever he has to see his in-laws. It's actually pretty funny. Job B, I guess I'm a PA for this woman who runs her own business. She just keeps buying things. Like she straight up bought me a new MacBook, then a Surface to use as a work computer. Thinks $3,000 for website redesign is cheap and paid it up front. Maybe I'm just poor though, who knows. Former nanny for a very wealthy Silicon Valley family. The mom had recently married her new husband when I was hired. Husband was an older, wealthy lawyer and wife was in tech consulting. They were always really kind to me and the kids were good despite having insane privilege. Honestly, the only weird thing was that the parents were addicted to 5-hour Energy and Coke Zero. I assume because they were total workaholics and needed the caffeine. I'd get texts at random hours just begging me to bring over Coke Zero and 5-hour Energy. I'd purchase cases at a time and it would all be gone by the end of the week. The kids didn't touch the stuff. They made sure of it. So I know it was pretty much all the mom and stepdad. Growing up, my mother would clean houses for wealthy individuals. There was an elderly widowed woman with large all-white poodles. She insisted that my mother clean them with bleach. She would provide 2 gallons of bleach each week. My mother never did bleach them. She just poured out the bleach in the tub. Wasn't really behind closed doors or anything, but I delivered furniture to a very rich person's mega house once, only to discover, as we were going from room to room, a few rooms were completely bare and empty. I didn't really register it at first because I figured we would be putting furniture in there with the load we were delivering, but that didn't happen, and I mentioned to a coworker how the one room was bigger than my living room and completely bare, and he said maybe they're getting stuff during another round, and the guy heard and said now that room is staying empty. I have no use for it. Same with the others too. I couldn't really wrap my head around a lot of things after that. First off, to be rich enough to afford a house like that. Then on top of that, purposefully have parts of your house go completely unused because you don't care about them. Like, why even buy a house that big then? Why overdo it and leave some of it unused? Why not just buy what you need and use it all? Rich people are weird. When in my late teens, I did babysitting work for my uncle and aunt's children. Bit of context. Both of our families came from basically nothing. Both my mum, dad and uncle worked their asses off in their 20s 30s to get to where they are. Uncle ended up with the more lucrative business. My parents also want to ensure that me and my sisters didn't grow up to be entitled heads. So if we wanted something that didn't directly relate to our education or well-being, we were paying for it. We were all employed by the family business by the time we were 13. What I learned doing babysitting for my young cousins that they were experience the complete opposite. They got whatever they wanted whenever. It was so surreal to interact with these kids who casual talk about and showed me toys, phones, watches and various other items that my uncle and aunt got them on basically a whim. Who randomly spends thousands of dollars on ultimately useless things for their kids regularly like this. As a result, 2/3 cousins grew up to be self-entitled assholes. Edit. Words. Rip large thumb small phone. I was about 16 and babysitting for an obviously well-off family. Father was a lawyer. Not sure what the mother did. Weird couple. She was lanky and maybe 6 inches taller than him. He was short and fat and just a grumpy dude. Their 2 sons were wretched spoiled brats. They paid well, so I continued to babysit for them on and off for maybe 6 months. While I was admittedly snooping around this guy's office, I found a very intriguing treasure box about waist high on one of his several bookshelves. It wasn't locked and the contents are making me laugh as I type this. About ½ ounce of pot, pink vibrator, metal cock ring, butt plug, several different types of pills scattered around the box, couple dozen Polaroids from what looked like a weird BDSM party in the 80s, including the couple doing weird fetish shit. was hard to look them in the eyes after they got back that night. Both because I smoked a joint of his grass and because I couldn't get the image of this lawyer with a ball gag getting paddled by his wife out of my head. The family I worked for had a nanny. Youngest daughter forced her nanny to push her around the entire property while she just emitted a high C note. The property was hundreds of acres and they were at it for quite a while. The breadwinner is the husband. Can't say what he does as I believe he wouldn't like that. Either way, he was a menace to the trees. Would need work breaks, so he'd grab a pole saw and go to town on random trees. Then he'd get bored and tell me to clear the piles he made and pretty the trees back up. This was also their 365-acre weekend home, complete with dam generated power that took them off grid. They had a mansion in the big city, cottage in cottage country, and this property in farm country. There was a serious lack of showering on the father's part. He worked from home 95% of the time and his office stunk. They also had absolutely no clue that I lived a 50-minute drive away, without traffic. Up to 2 hours if there was a wreck, in a town they had lived in all their lives. I lived on a base, so it's not somewhere off the beaten path. They finally realized about a month before I moved away and were shocked at how far I drove. No clue. Made my day almost 13 hours for less than minimum wage. But they loved their kids and so did I. So what's to complain about? Eater. They were good employers, just clueless. I was also young and didn't really realize my worth. When I left, they were extremely sad to see me go. They did give me some high ticket items after a few months, including a plane ticket for my own personal use. A few months after I left, they said they really didn't realize how awesome I was. They were quirky, but not terrible. My husband used to work for a landscaping company. There was one lady he would always come home with crazy stories. Like they paid a pilot year round just to be on standby in case they wanted to fly somewhere. Also, they apparently paid Google a fee every year to keep their property off of Google Maps. Also, if this is the same woman and I'm remembering correctly, she had 2 solid platinum reindeer for Christmas decorations. Worked for a beverage distribution place in a very ritzy resort area for a while. Guy's assistant shows up and says he needs a pallet of Evian for his boss's house. No problem. We load it on the truck and drive it up to his house. After unloading, we ask him where he wants it and he leads us into the garage and asks if we can help unload it. So we start downstacking and carry cases of this into what I thought would be the kitchen or pantry. Nope. Straight through the house to the back deck. He was filling his hot tub with Evian. My sister used to be a nanny for a very famous former F1 driver. I'm pretty sure the kids' outdoor playset, jungle gym, castle-like playhouse etc. cost more than my sister's apartment. On the plus side, him and his wife are apparently the most down-to-earth, sweet people. Technically behind the garage door, neighbor won the lottery. Nothing huge, but nice. He took the lump sum and upgraded his little ranch to have a big ass garage and in-ground pool and cabana. Never was anyone there prior, but after, he had so many friends. One of the first things he bought was his dream car, a red Lamborghini. One day in the summer, he was having a party and his friends wanted him to show it off. So he started it up and was revving it in the garage when it caught fire, burned the house to the ground, taking half the money he had in cash and duffel bags with it. Turns out, he didn't have insurance. Ended up using the rest of the winnings to rebuild his old house, but lost everything. Somehow he managed to push the Lambo out of the garage, and to this day, there's a half-burnt Lamborghini under a tarp in his backyard. 20 years later. Well, I've been in a couple really rich people's houses who have had fires. One is a semi-famous boxer, 2 world championship belts, which he had sitting on his kitchen table. The weird part was, he had pictures of himself hanging all over the house. Not with his kids or his wife in the pictures, mind you, just of him. It was weird. And another couple full on screamed at their kid because he allowed smoke to get into his trombone case. Not sure how he was supposed to prevent that, but whatever. They also lost their minds because the insurance company wouldn't pay to get them brand new handmade cabinets imported from Italy. One family lived in the middle of nowhere. Huge house. Had a hot tub room. Every bedroom had a walk-in closet and a bathroom suite. Crazy stuff like that. But this guy absolutely loved his 4-wheeler. He told me he paid to add an attached garage specifically for his 4-wheeler, and the 4-wheeler was the only thing allowed in the garage.